Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Philadelphia. I just want to say that I am so happy to have this second Plan, Prepare, Protect webinar with the Honorable Councilwoman Richardson. I, she's just doing so much amazing jobs here in this city with passing the legislation. And I just think that you have the pulse. And I just appreciate the fact that you had taken, this tool of, virtual education. And so I just want you to introduce yourself and just tell the audience why you feel it's so important for us to stay connected in these webinars.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Madam Register Wills Tracey Gordon. It's truly an honor and privilege to join you this evening for this webinar. And it is important for us to get this information out to the individuals we serve, even in the age of COVID, even in this new normal that we are now dealing with. So I truly want to thank you for your partnership, not only for your historic election to the office, but for your partnership and all you have done and continue to do to ensure that we inform our constituents about how we have to protect our generational wealth, protect our legacy, and protect the properties that are in our families. So I just want to thank you for offering this information to the community, allowing us to have this partnership and get this information out there. For me, I'm a lifelong Philadelphian, born and raised in Winfield as a community where I currently live and am raising my family. And I was always taught that you hold on to your family legacy, but we never knew exactly what that meant, right? So coming along, I graduated from Gompers, all public schools, Gompers, Masterman, Girls High, went on to Westchester University, not too far from here, and came back to volunteer and serve as a grad intern in Philadelphia City Council, helping people with issues just like this. My mother passed away, my father passed away, my uncle passed away and left me at home. What do I do? So that's the type of information we want to continue to give to our constituents and just make the information as readily available as possible. And I'm looking forward to this forum tonight because I went through it myself. My father died in 2012. My grandmother, who lived with us since high school, she died in 2015. And then 8 months later, my mom passed away the first council session of the last term. And I remember being devastated. I was still, young. I was in my late 20s and, having to figure out what's next. What do I do? What are the next steps? And it's such a daunting time in someone's life when you lose a loved one that you just don't know what to do next. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and hopefully helping someone out there to understand what we need to do to protect our generational wealth and our properties here in Philadelphia. And I just want to leave everybody with this really quickly. I have one of my favorite African-American philosophers, and he goes by the name of Jay-Z. And he says in his song, generational wealth, that's the key. My parents didn't have much, but the shift starts with me. So I hope that tonight the information we receive from our Register Wills and her team starts the shift that we all need to ensure we're protecting our generational wealth. So thank you very, very much. And I'm looking forward to this forum and doing all that I can to help as much as I can.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's funny, I'm so happy that your generation, caught on and was able to save your family acres of land. And so now your responsibility is to make sure that your daughter, and once you have grandkids, they all know it's paperwork. And this simple piece of paper, the will, is the way you could protect your generational wealth, protect your houses, and pass it down to who you decide, who you want it to decide or where it goes, and you want to know where to go. You don't want to have to ask the neighbor. You don't want to have to ask the funeral director. You want to know, okay, now that my mother died, my grandmother died, I need to call or contact the Register of Wills. And that was one of the things that I promised on my campaign, and it's been 1 year, is that I would make sure that everybody in Philadelphia, all the citizens, will understand what we did at the office. And then after that, I said, then we're going to help you legally get out of these tangled titles. These are houses that you have some ownership in, but it's not in your name. It's still in your dead mother's name, your dead grandmother's name, your dead uncle's name, whoever is still legally in their name, so you can't do anything with those properties. And then the third thing that I promised is that I would make our office look like the city of Philadelphia and diversify it. And I hired the first solicitor for the Register of Wills in its history, Black American, attorney Sharon Wilson. And I hired her because she spent decades working in the field of wills and estates, teaching as an academia. And I said I needed to bring on an attorney that could help me understand the process quicker so I can let you all know how important this office is. This office has been around since the 1600s. The 1600s. This was way before the Revolutionary War. White men came over, they got land, and they figured out legally, once I die, if something happens to me, I still own this land, and I want to transfer it down to my kids. And that is simply making a will.
And Madam
And
Register of Wills, I wanted to mention one other thing that you talked about. It's so important that we understand if a home is not in your name, you're not able to get any services. You're not able to get any assistance from the city. You can't apply for any programs because the home is not in your name. And that's why what you are doing is so important.
It gets worse than that. Even particularly during a pandemic like this, you can't even get a home equity loan. You can't get all this grant money that's getting ready to come down this here. You can't qualify for the grant money to help you do basic system repairs like plumbing, electric, all that kind of stuff is roof, ceiling work. You can't get it because the house is still sitting in someone's name, and you just probably just don't understand. Nobody's told you about this. When they died, you just said, okay, we get the funeral, we bury them, and you just never thought that there's another process. And that is, you have to come and probate the estate or raise the estate, whether you have a will or not. There's inheritance taxes that if you don't pay is accumulating interest. And it's just causing us to lose so much generational wealth. That's why we got a whole abundance of homelessness. And that's why we really can't sustain with the gentrification coming in, because they're building these new structures around you and you can't qualify to get a home equity loan so you could, fix your house up so it can maintain its value. Or when you go to sell it, which you can't because it's not in your name, you can't even get market value. So you end up getting frustrated and leaving the home or just forgetting about it or saying, well, when I die, it's, and then you leave it another generation and your kids. So those are more estates. And so it's been a year and we have done some phenomenal things. Attorney Terry Booker has assisted me in creating a program that can help with the probate fees. It's called Probate Deferment Initiative, and she'll talk about that shortly. And we just got a couple of new cases that, we can come back and report to you all that, we help these people get the houses in their name so they can, thrive. So that's up and coming. But I just wanted to just let people know in the listening audience some of the things that we do at the Register of Wills. And then I also serve as clerk of Orphans Court, which simply means that I'm the one that issue marriage licenses and we preserve the records and archives. And so that's another one of my duties. And then also we handle the records for the guardianship records. So we have them set those appointments. So it's really a lot that people don't understand that one office does. And with my team of close to around 70, we're still open at City Hall by appointment only. We never closed during the pandemic. I think we closed maybe for 1.5 weeks and we were back up and running. Our staff has learned how to manage in the COVID environment by being able to work from their houses, some of them, and then the ones that are working here in the city of Philadelphia or at City Hall, we made sure that they'll have shields all around their desks, and we have, the utmost COVID-19 prevention or, preventative safety measures that we've had in the city. So we have been very essential, and we think we have reached, and John probably can give the numbers better, but we are reaching thousands and thousands and thousands of Philadelphians, and we are still serving them. You can still come and get married. You can still come probate. You can call us. We will walk you through everything step by step. But the main thing that we all have to come up with some better solutions, and I want to partner with you, is how we get the information to everybody about the importance of a will, which is simply a document you write during your lifetime that distributes your assets. These are my assets. These are the people I wanted to go to. Signature. That's a will. That's a basic will. That's a legal will. Always remember, you do not have to, in the state of Pennsylvania, you do not have to get it notarized. You don't have to get witnesses, but we recommend. But a will simply is a piece of paper that you write. You have to be at least 18 years old, and you have to make sure that you tell somebody where the will is. A lot of times people will come to my office and say, she talks about a will. We know she had a will, but we can't find it. So that equals you don't have a will. A valid will in Pennsylvania, it must be signed by the person that's creating the will, the testator. It must be signed at the bottom of the list of assets. If you want to add more assets and you add them under that signature, they won't count. It has to be, the signature has to be at the bottom. So right now in COVID, you can't get out of the house. Just simply write down your assets, who you want them to go to, and sign it, put it up somewhere safe, and let somebody know where it is. That's a basic will. The better will is a will that you get from a professional, with consultation from a professional. We have a list of community legal services here in Philly. We'll put it up in the chat that will help you create wills. And we also have a listing of community legal services here in Philly that will help you probate your estate. And so the best type of will that we recommend, strongly recommend, is one that you're sitting in front of an attorney that really, that's what they studied, or that's what they worked in wills in the States. You want somebody that's pretty knowledgeable about that, because sometimes you may have some complicated situations and you want somebody to have the right answer and don't have to look it up, some type of experience. And you want to make sure that you tell them that you want this will self-proven affidavit. In other words, when you make a will in front of your lawyer, you have the two witnesses there, and they're going to sign off that they they witnessed this, and you sign. And then when you die, and your estate or your executive of your estate brings the will into the Register of Wills, they don't have to bring the two witnesses because it's a self-proven affidavit. If you just have a regular will, a basic will, and it does not have, it's not self-proven affidavit, then you're going to have to bring the two witnesses. And sometimes that can be tricky because that witness may have died or moved or become uncooperative. I'm not saying that you won't be able to continue your business. It's just it's going to take, a little while longer, as opposed to if you come in with a will, with a self-proven affidavit, you come in, sit down, and you're in and out of there, in and out of our office like within less than an hour.
So, Madam Register Wills, can you just detail that process a little more? Like when you go into the office, because I remember working as a constituent service representative where we would direct families to come down to your office. We would
Right.
hand walk them down and do the pass off to your office. And I
Right.
too, since I've been in City Hall, even under the COVID-19 precautions, have seen your team members working diligently,
Oh,
each day
yes.
that I come into City Hall, because I come in on that corridor, just working very hard. So can you just talk a little bit about that process a little more? Because I
Okay,
think
so
for me,
I'll do y'all better.
intimidating.
I'm going to let my attorney, Sharon Wilson, because she's done it for years, and she's just going to give you the brief. Because remember, we don't expect y'all to understand everything what they were saying tonight. These are because we're going to keep coming back, and if you go on our Facebook pages, we talk about it over and over again. The thing that I want to alert you all is to start thinking about, let me protect my wealth. Let me make a will. So Sharon is going to run through.
But first, just briefly, I do want to add my congratulations as well to the Councilwoman Richardson, for your historic win. So it just seems like whether it's protesting in the streets during a pandemic or running for government to make change from the inside, when these young people say they got next, they're serious about it. So what happens when you have the will, you're going to the Register of Wills office? We call that process probate. So when people say, did you probate the estate? What they mean is, did you go down to the Register of Wills and did you show them proof of your will? Did you bring your identification with you? Did you bring your fee? Because there is a fee to open the estate. Did you fill out the proper paperwork? Did you take an oath that says, listen, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do legally under the law? And once you do those things, you can, as the register described it, swiftly proceed to the next step. You will receive what we call letters testamentary, nice big gold seal, and the authority to take care of the business inside of that estate. Now, if you get down there and maybe you didn't do everything, or whoever died didn't do everything or didn't get around to it, and there is no will, you're still probating the state, but we call that type of probate an administration. You don't have a will. So then you have to figure out who is the next of kin, and you have to list that next of kin on the paperwork. And then you have to get the consent from those people, from the next of kin, to allow you to do the business under that will. Then you'll be appointed the administrator, and then you'll go forward as you would in a probate. But you can see how that initial step of trying to get kin, trying to get them to consent, and if there's no consent, then you have to have a hearing in front of the register. And as I tell people all of the time, as much as I admire the register, I wouldn't want her making decisions on behalf of my family. And I assume most of you wouldn't either. So you try to get the will done so that you don't have to involve other people in family business.
So that's basically the two ways, the proper way, or the way that's, I think, a lot more dignity. It guarantees that it's not going to be any squabbling. It's not going to cause any type of confusion, because you already just wrote your will with all the instructions, a legitimate will. You put it up. You don't register it with us. Many people think once they get the will, do you bring it down and register it at our office? No, not in the state of Pennsylvania. In Maryland, they do register theirs before they die. But in Pennsylvania, you don't have to. And then for everybody's listening, just make sure all the information that you are taking from this webinar is for the state of Pennsylvania, not for Maryland, California. So I know basically a lot of stuff is sort of basically the same, but the state dictates differently. And so I just wanted you all to make sure that this is coming from the state of Pennsylvania, and this is the laws that I have to follow. So when you don't leave a will, the state already made a will for you, called intestate. So in other words, it favors biology. You know what I mean? Like, who was your next of kin? Did you have a husband, a wife, children? And it goes down in that line. And then, they sometimes have to find all those people, and somebody have to agree that one person is going to be the one that speaks for the estate. And how many times do you think that that's going to run as smooth as I guess you don't even think about it, but they don't run smooth, Kathy, Councilwoman. I'm sorry, they do not run smooth at all. Sharon and I, Terry, we sit in them almost weekly, and it doesn't have a race, gender, uh, how much you is poor that's doing it and is rich. The difference is the rich people can afford some a mistake because they can hire attorneys to help them protect their estates. When you're poor, you know, you you don't have the money to hire an attorney. You don't have the time. Someone, it could be one sibling that's living in the house, and you live outside the house, and now mom's dead. So then it's like, well, who's going to pay the taxes? Well, you're living there. Who's going to pay the rent? It becomes so complicated, and then sometimes it gets to a part that just people just walk away and just forget about it, and then it's another generation, and the more and more the generations of those houses being in dead people's name, how do you think those houses are going to hold up? Because a lot of times, if you don't legally own something, you're not really going to pour a lot of, you know, the money in it. You know what I'm saying? Even if you can't even sell it. You can't get home equity loans on it. You can't leave it to your children. And so this is one of the things that we are trying to do by way of every mention is every social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we tell this story, this webinar over and over. We tell it over and over. So whatever you miss here, we're going to make sure that you all are going to get it in the future, or you can just call our office. So I started a program called Probate Deferment Initiative. And this is a program to assist people, assist them in getting out of these tangled titles so they can kind of be able to protect their legacy and start being able to do legal things with it. And one of the things that the attorneys that usually the legal aid attorneys that help people, they said that one of the barriers for them in helping them be able to get these tangled titles untangled was excessive fees that the Register of Wills, was charging. And they just said simply that if you could waive the fees, and it would help. And so I came and I had some attorneys look up, the legality, and then I found out that I couldn't waive it, but I could defer them. And defer them is like, as long as you're living in the house, we won't come for the fees. But if you sell the property, then we come for our fees. And we passed it around 6 months ago. And I just like was telling you all that we have a couple lined up, and this is history here. And Terry Booker, attorney Terry Booker, sorry, is she's the one that oversees the program for us, and she's the one that put together the team to make that possible, to make me as the registrar will be able to pass some type of policy like that, the first of its kind in the city and probably in the state. And I'm just happy to let you all know. And Terry can tell you a little bit more about the program, because not only did she assist us as a team of creating this program, but she made a partnership with the Recorder Deeds, which will tell you the difference. And they're actually waiving the fees. So Terry, just give them some good news.
Yes, thank you, Madam Register, and good evening, everyone, Councilwoman and all viewers. So the Probate Deferment Initiative, it was designed to help those who could not afford to pay the probate fees upfront, open up estates. So with the ability to open up the estate, you will have letters of administration issued, so you will be able to untangle your title. So we, as Madam Register mentioned, we have an agreement with Commissioner James Leonard, who was so gracious to agree to waive any recording fees for persons who were a part of the probate deferment initiative. So if you're a part of the program, those fees will be waived once you go to submit your newly created deed with your name or your family's name or whoever's going to receive the property at the deeds department, which is the most important part to untangling the titles. And if you decide to stay in the home, as Register mentioned, we will not come looking for the fees. But if you do decide to sell the home, we will be looking for those fees. And in order to accomplish and make sure that we will get those fees, we will be placing a lien on the property in order to ensure that our fees are paid as soon as you're able to pay, or as soon as you sell or anything of that nature, if you have access to funds within the estate as well. So we will be connecting you. If you know anyone who is eligible or has a tangled title and would be interested in the program, please give us a call or email us at row.pdi@phila.gov, and we will connect you with an agency who will give you an attorney that will be able to assist you through the process. And that also includes the creating a will, so you don't come into these issues and run into these issues again as the new owner of the property, whoever that may be.
Yeah, so that, I know it was thousands of tangled titles in the city of Philadelphia, and it's a crisis at this level. I just hope the word gets out, and we sent you all the digital information, and Philadelphia VIP are the ones that hold the Tangled Title Fund, so they have the money there, and so that's going to help them save money in their fund. So we defer them from our office, and then Commissioner Leonard just waives them, and so then they go directly, and once they untangle it, then you can qualify for basic system repairs, home equity loans, or you can make sure that in the will that is mandatory that you make after we assist you, that you can pass it down to your children, so we can just break, I guess the curse of just not minding your business. Minding your business. That's what we have to do, and we have to start talking about it and stop being afraid of wills. Stop being afraid. Everybody know what legal paperwork is. It's nothing but legal paperwork that we're not telling them. So one of the things that I wanted to do, I have a webinar coming up with the Realtors Association, is I wanted to see if council would, pass a bill, or even state legislators pass some legislation that would make it mandatory that when you sell a property in the city of Philadelphia, this information needs to be included in the package. Sort of like a welcome to Philadelphia packet. These are the rules. And the rules is, if you own a house, best practice, you make a will, because you are going to have to probate it. You are going to have to pay inheritance tax. This is stuff that you should just know as part of the business. It's not happening. It's not happening. I bought my house 20 something years ago, and of course I was told, hey, you need to get life insurance just in case, because I had little kids, right? Mm-hmm. Then they said, automatically it said that my homeowner's insurance, HOA, because of course their mortgage was like, I need some insurance, right? But somebody should also say, hey, but just in case something happens to you, you got 4 minor kids, Miss Gordon, and you own a house, this is some legal stuff that you need to know, that the state of Pennsylvania, this is the thing, just in case. And I know you probably say, oh, don't jinx me. No, it's not jinxing you. So I want to see if that is, included.
Well, I love that idea, Madam Register of Wills, because that's something that we've done in a variety of fashions. I mean, we have laws on the book where we're mandated to give out educational information while you're at the dentist's office. I mean, there's all type of laws on the books that we have in place, and I think we need to do something in this area. So I'm committed to working with you to see what type of legislation we could introduce in council to ensure that the information is given, even at the point of sale or point of purchase or transfer of title deed. We can figure out exactly, how to do it legally. But I'm committed to working with you and also to ensure that we're continuing to advocate for the Tangle Title Fund, because, we always run out of money in that program, and we always need, more money to help as many constituents as we can. So you can count on me to advocate on behalf of both of those programs and follow up with your office relative to potential legislation.
I just also wanted to make you all aware that within the next 25 years, $68 trillion worth of wealth is going to transfer from one generation to the next, because the baby boomers are aging out. 68, not billion, trillion. I just read an updated article that's chipping away because of COVID. It's a lot of expenses and the drainage on your assets. And right now, COVID is a thinkable moment in time. I mean, 400,000 people are dead already and counting. I want everybody to continue to be careful out there, and then make sure that I think we all should also definitely consider getting the vaccine, so we can have some sort of normalcy for our families and our kids. Imagine my granddaughter, half of her life, she has a mask on her face. That is, and so, being that death is around us, it's time to start talking about wills. It's time to talking about, who think about the people who will be affected when you pass away. Whether if you have minor children, you have disabled children, you may die before a parent that you were taking care of. I just had a case where the granddaughter, the mother was taking care of her mother, and she died before the grandmother, and the daughter or the granddaughter, but she automatically became the administrator. No, she had to come down. It's a process. It's a legal process that all you have to do is just take some time, consult with an attorney. Most all attorneys give free consultation, and we have all these organizations that they give consultation. They're doing virtual consultation and everything. And when we can come back out to some sort of normalcy, we're going to bring the workshops directly to your community. The churches are doing it. Christian Legal Clinic, they do them all the time. I don't know if they're doing them virtually now, but they were actually coming out into the community. And so once you probate your estate, then we give you information, you're going to have to pay some estate taxes. So don't think that you're going to get away with it, because it starts to ticking after the person died, and then ticks with interest. Sometimes if you pay it within 3 months, I think it's a discount. But Sharon is going to tell you all a little bit about that, because I know some people think they are going to avoid the inheritance taxes, and they're not going to avoid them. That's another thing that we need to understand about it. That's why you plan your estate. So your executor already knows, hey, pay the debt, distribute the assets. Not distribute the assets and say, oh, I had debt. No, pay the debt, distribute the assets. That's what your executor does. So Sharon, tell them a bit about the process of inheritance taxes and how,
you can't escape taxes by dying. So, you have a tax no matter what, right? Inheritance tax is a tax on a transfer from a dead person to, somebody else, live, institution, estate, whatever. When you die and you transfer, then you pay a tax on that transfer. Now, the rate of the tax isn't very large, but what happens a lot of times, just as the register was mentioning, people don't pay the tax at the time of death. They wait for one death to pass, another death to pass, a third death to pass, and all that time, the inheritance tax gains interest. So the best thing to do is to pay the inheritance tax at the time of death. As we have mentioned before, the Department of Revenue is willing to work out tax payment arrangements. And I know that we have some tax payment arrangements that are fairly, cheap, as little as maybe $25 a month, depending on the amount of the taxes. That's right. For that, you're not getting your taxes paid. And if you don't pay your tax, then you can't get the house transferred into your name. Then you can't make use of all of those programs we were just talking about. And there's a whole other slew of things that can't happen when that property isn't in your name. So that inheritance tax is something that you should know about, anticipate paying, understand that it's a tax on the transfer, and that you're not going to escape it, not even with a trust. Most of the time, you still have to pay that tax. So don't let that keep you from getting what would otherwise, be transferred into your name, your generational wealth.
If the person that the name of the house is in died in 1972, then you're going to be taxed on when they died and how much the house was worth in 1972. Okay? So if they died in 60, then you're going to be taxed on how much the house was worth in 1960. If they died today, then whatever is appraised for the city today.
You just taught me something, Madam Register Wills. I'm sorry to interrupt because I'm trying to let you do the presentation, but I'm just learning so much from you.
Yes.
You just taught me something, that you pay the taxes on the worth of the home at the date of death of the individual, not its current value today.
Right. Yeah. So if
That
they
is a
died in
revelation.
1960, whatever that property of land was worth in 1960, that's what you taxed on. You're not taxed on what it's worth today. So these are the things that I think, and I mean, I hope they'll start doing studies, to see exactly why, why people, when, why don't they know, like when somebody dies and they have assets and stuff, why don't they know to come directly to our office so we can, walk them through it. Now, how they accidentally get to our office is when they go to try to retrieve money out the bank account of the deceased. And then that's when they say, oh, you need a short certificate. And then that's when they like, where, who? And then it's like, you have to go to Register of Wills, room 180, City Hall. Sharon, tell them about what's happening when they go to the banks, because the banks, which I have to get with the Banking Association, because they
and I just
had
this conversation today, Register. You're right.
Yes.
For the Police and Fire Credit Union, who wasn't aware that you are able to go to the bank, even if you haven't probated a will, with the death certificate and the funeral bill, and you can extract money from the bank as long as it's less $10,000 or less. There's a recognition that sometimes you need that money right away. So, and even though we know we do as fast as we can with the probate process, you may need the money before that process happens. So at one point that money was, that dollar limit was 35. I think it raised to around 8, and now it's at 10. So the sad thing is that there are a few institutions that still are not aware of this and will say, no, you have to go get what we call a short certificate. But you are able to get some of those monies with those documents without a short certificate.
And so if you have $10,000 more, you have to come to us, probate, and get the short certificate. But if it's $10,000 or less in the bank account, they have to, by law, release the money. But what, like Sharon was saying, is they're still back on the law of the 2,500, not the amended law to say 10,000. And so that's something that we've been partnering with the funeral directors. And we just had a webinar with them, and we're supposed to have another one because now the other ones are calling and saying, hey, now we missed that. We want, because normally when somebody dies, they normally try to ask those questions to the funeral director, because that's the person that you need to give money to immediately, because you got to make the arrangements. And so now we're trying to educate them. What we're trying to tell you is you want your family where they don't have to go to the funeral director. They don't have to call Councilwoman Kathy Richardson's office. They don't have to, they already know that mom, grandma, dad left the will with either her attorney or in the lockbox in the back closet under her hat. And that they know that you have to go down to the Register of Wills, City Hall, Room 180, and give them the will, and they'll take you through that process. That's where I want everybody to go at here in the city of Philadelphia. And that's the education part that, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to help people, because I've always been big on quality of life, family, safety, cleaning up your neighborhoods, having pride and dignity in yourself. That's something that I always love to do. And so this right here is just like I breathe it now every day. I'm up in the night just thinking of different ideas on how I can get this message out to people, to teach them how to, protect their generational wealth, while at the same time, I wanted to stay open because people are dying and they have to come and do paperwork so they can obtain the assets that they deserve. Do you realize that when you live in a tangled title, you can't get homeowners insurance? We live in row homes. It suffers, something's going to leak, possible fire. And then now with global warming, FEMA, do you know that during Hurricane Katrina, when FEMA came, some of them could not get any assistance because the house that they lived in was still in the dead person's name. You can't get FEMA. You don't qualify for it because you don't own it. That's the question. Do you own it and prove it? The only way you can prove that you own property is that you have to have your name on the title. And so this is a conversation that we have to have, definitely nationally. We got percentages like even college graduates, which like we are in the African American community, the Black American community, only 30% of us are making wills, as opposed to like 70-something% of white graduates. And then people that aren't graduating, this statistic is just like we're just not doing it. And that's why we're losing property, because we aren't teaching people about what you need to know legally in every state that you live in. This is what we do in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know what they do in New Jersey. It's different. You got to know where you live. We have a big problem with common law marriage. There's no such thing as common law marriage here in the state of Pennsylvania since 2005. Now, before 2005, it was common law. There's no more common law no more. And that's causing a lot of problems. They're sitting around thinking they're in common law marriage until death occurs, and then they find out legally otherwise.
Yes, Councilman Richardson, you shaking your head like you know all about this. So common law marriage in Pennsylvania has been outlawed since 2005, January 1, 2005. So no matter how long you've lived with the person, if y'all exchange rings, if y'all call each other, that my husband, that my wife, it doesn't matter anymore. They will not recognize your marriage. The only way that you can get a common law marriage recognized is if you say that we've been common law since before 2005. Now, even if that's the case, proving a common law marriage is not easy. You have to give documents that show that you operated as a husband and wife. So you have to, at the very least, maybe you had some joint tax returns that you filed together. Maybe you bought property together. Maybe you wear rings. So it's really the totality of all of those things. But remember, that can be very difficult if you're trying to prove that you had a common law marriage when other family is trying to prove, no, they didn't, they weren't married. Right. Because they're trying to get the assets the same way you trying to get the assets. And if they can knock you out the box, then they don't have to worry about you as an obstacle to getting those assets. So remember, there's no common law marriage post 2005. That puts most of us out of the box. And the real ironic thing is that I believe that part of the reason for passing that law was that it was affecting women negatively, because they would believe they could get all of the benefits of marriage when in fact they couldn't. And the fact that we don't know about it, that it's not getting out there, is still harming women who believe that there is something called common law marriage. And what you should know is that most of the country is no longer a common law marriage states. So we're behind, but we're still with the majority on this. So if you want to get married, even if it's getting married right before the end. The register provides something here called a self-uniting marriage. You don't have to have a pastor or priest or anybody. The two of y'all can get married. And remember, if the person that you are living with has been married before, that can actually hurt you if you're trying to prove a common law marriage, because what that says is they know how to get married if they want to. And if they didn't get married, they got married before and they didn't get married to you, then that means they chose not to get married to you. So common law marriage is not something that you want to fool around with. Just go get that piece of paper.
You best believe when it's time after that, no sooner as that last shovel of dirt go over the coffin, people in that family or that will lawyer, you're gonna get all kinds of phone calls saying, he was still married to me, or that's where the importance of a will goes. And this is a conversation that you want to have now, and you don't want to wait until after the person is dead or you're dead. So this is conversations that we need to have just as normally as we have conversations about any other thing that's general. It's just a general conversation. Girl, you got a will? Because I just got my will the other day. Do you just talk about it. It's a discussion that needs to be had. And so that is
not registered that if you're trying to get common law marriage, but you can't, like for a reason, like maybe the man is already married, then that is even more important that he leaves or he or she have a will, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get around that. Or
I'm leaving the house. Yes, I'm leaving the house to granddaughter Jamila. That's not a will. That is, trust me, that's not a will, because the siblings or her kids is gonna come and say, granddaughter Jamila can have a house if she buy me out, but because there's no will. Now, if you put a will, then that's what you said. This was your property. You have a right to say where your property is, what heirs or who your property is going to go to, and you have a right to name the person that's going to take care of the business. So out of those 4 kids, which one of the kids? It might not because you're the oldest now. It might be the one that's the most responsible. Or you may not want to make that differentiation. You may want somebody that's a very good friend of yours, or maybe the attorney that you use. That is a decision that you have to decide too. But the main thing is you need to let somebody know where it is. If it's at the lawyer's office, it's there. If it's not at the lawyer's office and it's where your important papers is, you have to let somebody know.
Now, Madam Register Wills, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions before we hit the 7 o'clock hour. Some questions that were submitted.
The ones you provided?
Yes, ma'am.
And the first one talks about what are some of the common mistakes people make when trying to protect or preserve their wealth. The most common mistake that I see is that people underestimate how little it really takes to change somebody's life. Not just maybe you give them a house, but maybe you give them a small amount of money or a piece of jewelry or something that's not particularly large. What I hear all the time is, well, I don't have much, but it doesn't take much to really change the path of somebody's life by just taking what you have and benefiting someone else with it. Also, the next question is whether or not we have any tips for someone who wants to approach a family member about creating a will. One of the things that I strive to do in private practice is to make the process easy for people. And so what I would suggest that you do is, one, talk to the family member again and again and again and again. And I often speak about the fact that it took me 5 times before my mother would make a will. I had to ask her 5 times. And this is my business. But sometimes it just takes people a minute. So the first thing I would say is start talking to them about it. And the second thing I would say is think about it in a big picture way, sort of like, this is what I have. These are the people who I have in my life. And this is who I want to have, what I have. That's the sort of thinking about a will in its most simplest way. But what I would say is to start talking to that family member, because it may take them 4 or 5 times before they really hear you. Talk about not what they're doing, but talk about what they could do for somebody else. And is there a formal process for making changes to a will? Yes, there is a formal process. When you make a change to a will, if you just want to, add a little something, we call that a codicil. That just means I'm adding a little something on. But if you actually want to just change the entire will, you can do that as well. We just update it. We make a reflection of the fact that the prior will is no longer any good, and we go through the same signing process and notary process that we did for the first will. Is there a limit to the changes? No. I get phone calls in private practice. I used all the time when some kid might, annoy some parent, and they would be on that phone, say, I want to change my will. Or a grandkid doesn't do what they think they were going to do. We want to change my will. I let people calm down a minute, and then if they're still good for it, then we move ahead. So no, there's no limit, but there is a formal process for changing it. And you have to be careful about trying to change your will on your own, because you want to make sure that what you don't actually do, if you're just trying to amend a will, that you don't actually end up creating a whole new will, which would make your prior will null and void. And you could do that easily if you don't use some of the formalities that have to go along with changing a will and making a codicil. Can you provide some insight on putting a business or a rental property on a will? And is there a special process to do this? There's no special process, but you should keep in mind, if you're putting a business into a will, the format, like the entity format of the business. So if it's a corporation, you don't just say, I give my business, but I give all of the stock in my business. And if it's a LLC, you want to make sure you're giving all the membership interest in your business. And if it's a partnership, you're going to look to the partnership agreement to see how and what you're able to give in a will, for example, about the business. And if you're thinking about giving a business to someone, that's the kind of thing that you probably should talk about with the person ahead of time. Think about whether you're giving the business to the person in order that they can run the business. So you definitely need to have a conversation ahead of time and somebody who's familiar with the business, or whether you're giving it to them to sell the business. Again, that's a different conversation. Hey, I'm just going to give you the stock. These are the people who might be interested in it. This is how you would sell it. Also, if you're thinking about giving a business in a will, also think about having an insurance policy that gets payable to the business at your death, because running a business can be expensive, and starting it up again when somebody else has passed away, especially if they had like an illness, or maybe the business was closed down or it was reduced in some way and you're trying to run it again, you'll need some initial startup monies, because it's almost like, starting a new business sometimes. When a property is left to more than one person, who's responsible for tax payments and upkeep? We only get this question every single webinar. Right?
Yes.
So who's responsible if it's left to more than one person? They are all equally responsible for tax payments and upkeep. But the kicker is, we know that everybody's not going to put in the way that they should.
Exactly.
So if you're the one putting in, you can reduce what the other person is entitled to by the amount of your contribution, so that in the end, y'all are all sort of even. But who's actually legally responsible for it? You all are legally responsible for it, for your portion of that payment. All right.
Excellent. That was excellent. Particularly
you see why I hired attorney Sharon Wilson? When I heard her talk about her passion about helping people understand the importance of minding your business. This is your business. You have control of it while you're alive, while you're in your healthy state of mind, while your kids, are able to understand and learn. This is just a business conversation that you're having with your family, Kathy. Even you got kids. These are healthy conversations that they need to know, just like you knew how long, generations, that your family owned these acres of land and y'all managed to, salvage that. That needs to be taught to them. That's spoken word. This is how we learn. We learn how to read. We learn how to pass this information. And that's why I said, everybody who's listening to us tonight, please talk to your families, talk to your friends, talk to everybody about this. We are open for business at the Register of Wills. We are open 5 days a week by appointment only. We answer questions online. So if you go to row online at phila.gov, ask the question, we'll send it to the department. They'll get back to you. We are marrying people at least close to 100 a week. People are getting married.
Wow.
People are really getting married. My department, they come to work every day just to make sure these licenses are issued to you all. And the marriage records, remember, they did extend getting the real ID, because remember, everybody has to have that real ID, else you can't travel. And they extended it another year, but sometimes you had to come to our marriage records department, which is next door to the marriage license department, and you have to get those records to prove your name. And so I'm so happy that we had this time. I still want to remind you all, follow us on your favorite social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube at PHLROW or PHLROW. And if you want me to come to any of your organizations to give these webinars, feel free to contact her and we will make arrangements. We sent everything to you, Councilwoman, digitally, so you can send to them. And if you ever need anything from us, call me. I'm just happy that, I'm happy I get to serve with you.
I am too, Madam Register Wills, and I really want to thank you. And I want to publicly say this because you have already helped our office, help constituents get assistance with interfacing with your office. One family who lost their mother and their father in 2020, you helped them with initiating the process to probate their parents' will. And then another family that we had to get connected to your office. So I am honored to serve with you, and I thank you for the way that you respond to our offices expeditiously. You are always there on time. You say, I'll be right on it. You respond to the email, you say, I'll be right on it. So it truly is an honor and privilege to serve with you, someone who has a real heart for people and a heart for the community. Ever since I've known you and when I first met you, you were working on behalf of your local community, even coming into city government, advocating on behalf of your community. And I remember that. And I remember how much you care. And it really shows in all the work that you've been doing. And we received all your files. We have been sharing them. We share the information in our newsletter, on all of our social media pages, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn too, but I don't do LinkedIn as much.
I don't either. But
Yeah,
John said, we got to be on LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, John.
Yes, and the
But
kids.
Facebook, I'm Facebook and Instagram.
Yes, and we even made a TikTok page, so we're going to mosey on over to TikTok as well.
Yeah.
Because the kids say TikTok, so we're going to mosey on.
Yes, everybody's on TikTok now.
Yes, but I just, seriously want to thank you because even I learned so much from this presentation tonight, even down to the fact that in the Commonwealth, your will doesn't have to be notarized. That, you just have to sign it and someone needs to know where it is, that you simply come down to the office to start the process. And if you don't have a will, you can still start the process and just go, in another way. So I just learned so much from the presentation from you and your entire team. And I just want everyone to know we are here for you as well. If there's anything that we can do on your behalf, working and interfacing with all of our city departments, any quality of life issues in your community, even connecting you with the Register of Wills office, anything that we can do, we are here to serve each and every one of you. And we're so happy that you could join us to learn this information this evening. And we hope that something was said that can help better your life or the life of your family. So I just want to thank you. I'm so honored to work with you. And I look forward to continuing this partnership and all the legislative ideas we talked about tonight. And also how we can help to fund the organizations who are doing the work to help individuals on the ground like Philly VIP with the Tango Type Fund and other organizations who are doing this work. So just thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Good evening and have a safe every day. Just make sure that we put the mask on, guys. Please put the mask on.
Yes, wear your mask.
Please put the mask on.
Yes, wear 2 masks if you have it. Practice,
make your kids wear them.
Yes. Practice physical distancing, not social, but physical distancing.
Physical distance, yeah.
And consider signing up to get the vaccination. I know I signed up. I'm waiting to get the call, and I'm going to wait in line. And whenever they call me, I'm going to go down and I will get the vaccine because it's important that we can move.
It's very important
From this moment. We, have gone through this long enough, and we need to start to get back to some level of normalcy, not just for ourselves, but for our children,
Children.
our little babies like Yum Yum, and for my
Yes.
we all have to get back to some level of normalcy. So please consider signing up to get the vaccination as well.
Have a nice night. Bye-bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Good night.
Night.